All right, so you're watching this video hopefully because you're looking to dive a little bit deeper into building a travel agency page that freeCodeCamp has. So we're going to walk through it. And my name's Rob. I'm with PreCodeCamp, where I am a coding instructor, and I'm going to be going through this little laboratory that they have here for us, and just going to try to go through it and maybe explain a few things as we're going through it, because the end goal is for you to learn something in these videos, and I may point out a few things on why are we doing it this way, or this is where it needs to go, kind of thing. And so that's what we're going to be doing in this video. So not only are you going to be getting the solution to it, but you're also going to be getting a walkthrough with some explanations on why we're doing things the way we do. So if that's something for you, you came to the right channel. Make sure that you like and subscribe. That always helps us out. All right, let's go ahead and get to it. All right, so this is the page that we're given to go ahead and to complete. Again, this is building a travel agency page with freeCodeCamp, and we can see an example of what it's going to look like. So it does look like we have some H1s, some H2s, some paragraph tags, maybe an unordered list here, and then some pictures with some captions that go on underneath it. So that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to utilize here. And if we take a look at the user stories, it tells us it's almost linearly explaining to you what you need to do step by step in order to get like a check mark at each one of these, right? And so I believe it has 13 different user stories. So there it is. And then down below, we have all the unit tests that we can go ahead and run the tests and then see which ones does it check off, right? And so we're going to be doing that throughout this video. I will have these all chaptered out based upon the user story. So if you happen to get stuck on a user story, you can just fast forward to that one. But like I said, if you end up watching the video throughout, then you may pick up on little tips and tricks that you may not have known before. All right, so let's go ahead and get ready with user story number 1. It says here that we should have a doc type declaration, okay? And hopefully you learned through the lectures that this is the very beginning part of the document. And I'm always encouraging students, hey, if you don't know what some of these tags are, make sure that you do take a look at W3 schools. And what I would recommend looking up, again, if you're not understanding what the doc type is, just do a Google search of doc type W3 schools HTML. And when you do a Google search for that, you'll be presented with something that looks like this. And it's just telling you that, hey, all HTML documents must start with the exclamation doc type declaration. This declaration is not an HTML tag. It's more of an information for the browser to use and to know what type of document to expect. So in this example here, that's what we're going to be utilizing. So again, nothing wrong with taking a look at documentation and then coming back to your page here and applying it. So again, no closing tags with this. The user story here for doc type declaration with the HTML, that will suffice for user story number 1. All right, we're moving on to user story number 2. It says you should have an HTML element with the language set to English, or the EN, right? And this is going to be one of those tags that gets an opening and a closing tag. And what do we mean by that? We're going to come down here. We're just going to do HTML. And then we're going to set the language, and we're going to set that to the English. And then we want to go ahead and have a closing tag on here. And that closing tag, you're going to notice that we're putting a slash, and then we're typing out the HTML. Now, again, another example of, hey, if we didn't know about this, we can always go to W3 schools and take a look at what an HTML tag is. It represents the root element of the HTML document, and it goes right below the doc tag. And you can see here the language attribute, we're setting that to English, and notice that we do have a closing tag right here. In between the HTML tags is going to be where we're going to put the head, we're going to put the body, okay? And so those are the things that will be pretty much standard anytime that you are doing this. And really what we're getting at here, and if you end up using obviously an IDE like Visual Studio Code, that all this stuff is going to be encapsulated with what we call as boilerplate code. That is standard HTML elements that will go on any HTML page, and it does it all for you automatically, but we will have to manually type these in for this to work. That is user story number 2. So we are on user story number 3 here with building a travel agency page. And it says here that we should have a head element that is containing a meta void element with the character set be to UTF-8. And we should also have a title inside there. And that title should contain the text of travel agency page. So a lot of stuff built into this right here. And let's go ahead and do this out methodically. Okay, so first thing is let's do a head element. So I'm coming into my line number 3, and we're going to do head. And again, we're going to close out the head right there. Okay, so once we have that done, then it's time to go ahead and add the meta. Okay, now the meta, it says on here, it is a void element. Okay, and what does that mean? That means that there's no closing tag on there. So let's go ahead and create our meta tag. So the meta is going to be right here. We're going to type meta, and then it wants the character set. So char set, and we want to set that equal to UTF-8. And again, this is a void element, meaning that it does not need to have a closing meta tag on there. And then the last part on here, it says that we do need to put a title on here. And this does get a closing tag. And what goes in between the elements, this is going to be travel, agency, and then page. All right. And that should satisfy steps number 3 for user story number 3. Okay. So as you can see, we're going in order here, right? And we're just going to be moving on to the next part here. All right, so user story number 4 here, meta tag, and we want to put this inside of the head. And this is going to contain a short description for the website with SEO. Let's go ahead and add that. Now, again, I always suggest if we're not given a lot of clues on this and we're not remembering from the previous lessons, then W3 School's MDN documentation is going to be your friend. So let's go ahead and take a look at what a meta description looks like. So if you did do that Google search, this is where you would actually end up being. Again, we're just looking at meta tags, W3 schools. Okay. And down here, it says you can define a description of your web page by utilizing the meta tag right here. Again, it's a void element, meaning no closure. And then we have the keyword here of name, which is going to be the description, and then the content. Okay. Those are the two things that it's going to be looking for in your web browsers, or if you're sharing things on Facebook. This is where it's getting that information from, is your metadata. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to go ahead and utilize this over here. It didn't give us any specific things to use when it comes to what do you want to put in here for the description. So really anything is fine that you would like to put in here, but maybe we could adjust this to travel agency page. Okay. And that would be something that might be used here to describe the page. So this will allow us to check that box to have a meta tag with the head talking about the description for SEO. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. All right, so number 5 here is the H1. You should have an H1 element to present your travel destinations. And so what did they use up here for their example here? They said discover Italy. And so that's what we're going to kind of do and mock here. So that way we're not trying to recreate the wheel. So I'm going to go ahead and do this underneath the head section. So we do need to have a body for this. And so anything that goes inside of the body for an HTML page is what's actually getting visibly shown. So I do want to make sure that I have opening and closing tags on this. I do wish that the code here will allow me to do a prettier type of formatting, but this should kind of work for now. So I'm going to do an H1 tag, and that is going to be our header here, and we're going to do discover Italy. Okay. And then we should see things appear on the page as we're going through it. So H1 tags, they do get opening and closing, and that is the markup for it. So I believe we are complete with the H1 element, and we'll be moving on to step number 6, or user story number 6 rather. So user story number 6, it says here that we should have a paragraph below the H1 element introducing the travel opportunities. So again, I'm going to take inspiration from our Discover Italy example. I'm going to grab this text here, And then I'm going to come back over here and it says underneath our H1. And again, it reads from top to bottom. I did indent this one just a little bit just to make things a little more readable. So once I'm down here, I'm going to do a paragraph tag, and paragraph tags are going to be the letter P with the tags. And again, these are going to be open and closed tags. And what goes inside of it is going to be our text. So let me go ahead and paste that in there. All right. So perfect. That has our text that we need, and that should satisfy number 6. Okay. So let's keep on moving on. User story number 7, it says that we should have an H2 element with the text of packages. So let's come down here. We're going to do H2. Okay. And then we're just going to do packages. And then we're going to close off the H2. And again, as you're going through this, maybe some questions that I would ask if I'm live teaching this is how many H tags do we have, right? How many heading tags do we have? And the answer is 1 through 6. And each one goes smaller in the font size based upon the default font settings that they have with a normal web page, right? We have the packages on there. That should satisfy user story number 7. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. User story number 8 of building a travel agency page with freeCodeCamp. It tells us that we should have another paragraph element underneath the H2 to briefly introduce the various packages. And if we look at their example here, it says that we offer this package. So again, we're just going down the line in order. Each one of these are stacked on top of each other, and it makes it pretty easy to go through each one of these different user stories. So I'm going to go ahead and grab it. And again, we're just doing another paragraph tag. And in between the paragraph tag, I'm just going to go ahead and paste that information here. So there's the P tag, and then I just need to close it off right here. And that should satisfy this user story, which is number 8. Okay, moving on to the next user story. Okay, user story number 9. It says that we need to have an unordered list element with 2 list items. The 2 list items should have group travels and private tours, and the text on the item should be enclosed with an anchor element. Okay, so a lot of stuff going on in that one user story, but we're going to break it down. Okay. Again, the first thing that we need to think about is what is an unordered list? What does that look like? And let's take a look at their example. And we have group travel, private tours. So unordered list are bullet points. Okay, that's real simple. And then the anchor tag means that these are links. Okay, so we now broken that down. Let's take a look at what that looks like in the HTML markup language. So if I come over to W3 Schools and look up unordered list, I should get something that looks like this. And we have an unordered list with some list items, and that's where that information came from, right? Is, hey, we need to have an unordered list with list items, and we're going to put 2 of them in here. Okay, this one gives us coffee, tea, and milk, right? And the UL tag defines the unordered list, while the L tag creates that list. So the 2 need to work in combination. The last part on here is going to be the anchor tag. And again, anchor tag, you could have done a Google search for it. Anchor tag, W3 Schools, and you would have been brought to this. And this is going to be inside of our LIs when we make them. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at what we want to do. Just maybe reread this. And it says unordered list, and we need 2 list items. And inside there, they need to be anchor tags. Okay, let's create an example one first. And again, they used group travels for the first one. So I'm going to go ahead and copy it and bring it over here. So let's start out the foundation for this. And it's going to be an unordered list. Okay, and that does in fact get a closing tag. And then inside of the unordered list, we do need to have a list item. Okay, list item. And I'm always telling students, let's just go ahead and close them off right at the get-go once things start getting complicated. But when you are going through a non-browser based type of HTML document, closing tags come native, meaning like you can just type L and hit the tab button and it automatically puts in the closing tags. All right, next it said that we want that text in here. However, let's go ahead and put the anchor tag in there first. And Again, if you need a refresher of what that looks like, it is the anchor tag right here. It gets an opening and a closing one. And it does get an href attribute for when somebody clicks on it, that's where they're going to go. So I'm going to come in back over here, and we want the anchor tag, and I'm going to do open and close. And then I'm going to go ahead and paste in the group travel. And then for the 8, I don't think it gives us an actual link. And so we could potentially just do href, and we're going to set that equal to, for now, it can be, you can totally put in an HTML page. I'm just going to put in a hashtag here, and I believe this should satisfy for group travel. Next on here, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can shrink this up just a little bit so that li stays an all in one line for me. I'm going to go ahead and copy this because I know that this one is good. And I'm going to go ahead and paste the second one here. And instead of group travels, I want to do private tours. So I'm going to grab it and delete this part here. And now it is private tours. And you can see that now I have group travels and private tours. The H, as of right now, that didn't give us any specifics on what it wanted us to do. So I believe this should be good for user story number 9. All right, so we are on user story number 10 right here, where it says that we need to have another H2 with the text on their top itineraries. So I'm going to go ahead, and we've already have an H2, and so I'm going to grab it, and then I'm going to go ahead and come down here right after the UL, right before the body, and I'm going to go ahead and paste it. Now, I don't want it to say packages. I do need it to say exactly top itineraries. And this is because I'm assuming there's going to be a unit test later down below when we hit that test button that it's actually looking for that word. So we have top itineraries, and I believe that should help us with the number 10. All right, let's keep on going here. All right, so now we're in user story number 11. And we are going to break this thing down because it's almost like they flow into each other a little bit with 11 and then 12. And it's wanting us to have at least 3 figure elements. And inside there, inside the figure element, we're going to create a fig caption element and also an anchor element. So again, a lot of stuff going on all in this. And I am going to take a look at what we're talking about. And each one of these here, and I'll go ahead and collapse this here. Each one of these images is going to be its own figure. Okay. So think of this as, hey, this image here is going to be a figure, but it's encapsulating the image. Notice that my mouse turns into a pointer, which means that there's an anchor tag in there. And then we have the fig caption down below here. And I did create this in CodePen to just visually, if we put some outlines on here, maybe it will help us take a look at what is what. And if you see this red border right here, that is going to be our figure element. Okay. The next thing on here is it has an image inside here. Okay, perfect. So that is its own. And then we also have a caption down below. And then the last part here is making these clickable. Okay. I also have a W3 Schools to talk to you a little bit about what does that look like in code. And you can see here we have a figure element, and then we have an image, and then we have the fig caption. And so this is going to look very similar to what we're going to be putting on our page, except there's going to be one thing that we do a little bit differently, which is we're going to wrap the section here of the image, and we're going to put an anchor tag around it. A lot of things going on, like I said, but we're going to get one image correct because it says that we need 3 of these. So we're going to do one of them correctly, and then it's going to be real simple to add the others. So let's go ahead and take a look at what they did in their example here. And they just had this very first one. It says Rome and Center Italy. Okay. So we're going to come here and it says, hey, create a figure element. So let's do that. So there's the figure, and then we're going to close it off. So let's go ahead and do that. Next, it says, let's go ahead and add the image. Okay. And so the image here, it says, again, we're tapping into a little bit of number 12, but let's go ahead and add that image in here anyway. So we're going to do an image, and then we're going to do the source. And then let's go ahead and grab one of these right here. And let's go ahead and put that in there. And notice that we do get the Italy. Okay. And if you remember, image tags, they are going to be void elements, meaning that they don't need to have a closing tag associated with it. And then underneath the image, once we have it shown here, then we're going to do the fig caption, right? So fig caption. And then this one does get a closing one. And I'm going to go ahead and grab what it had, which is Rome in center Italy. And then I'm going to come back to our page here, and I'm just going to go ahead and paste that in there. Already it's looking exactly like theirs, but the one thing that we need to add to this is we need to add the alt. So let's go ahead and do that. But the one that I was thinking about is the anchor tag. Okay. And so what do we put in here? We can just put in the name of the image. And this is more or less for screen readers, as well as maybe the image becomes broken. Later on, you can have that alt tag or that alt attribute, and it will be a word on the HTML page that people see. So they know what image is there, but unfortunately it would be broken. Okay, so we did that. And then the last part here is add an anchor element to this. And it just needs to make sure that we have this right here as the link that goes to it. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this real quick. And this is the tricky part. Okay. I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to do an anchor tag. I'm going to do the href, and I'm going to set that equal to that URL that I just got done copying. Okay. Now I'm still in this anchor tag, right? I don't have the closing tag part of it quite yet, because there's still more things that we need to type inside here before we put that last greater than symbol on here. And that is going to be the target attribute. And we're going to set that equal to the blank. So it's going to be underscore blank. And what this will do for us is if they click on the image, they will be prompted to open up a new tab, right? A new tab would open up. Now, again, we got this anchor tag, and this is where a lot of students will get confused, or where do we put the closing thing? Again, we just want it to be around the image. And so I'm just going to hit the enter key right here and go ahead and close that off. Okay, so we're encapsulating that image. And I believe this is good enough for one of the images. I'm just going to go ahead and double check real quick that we didn't forget anything. We got the alt, we got the source, and then we chose that very first image. Perfect. I think that looks really good. So how are we going to do this? I'm going to go from figure here to figure, and I'm just going to copy it. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give myself a little bit of space by hitting the enter key. And then I'm going to paste it on here. Okay. Now, the only thing that I really need to change on here is going to be associated with the image. So the source obviously has to change to the next image. And we are going to be able to come in here and just paste it in here. And this one's going to be of the Alps for the alt. And again, you can change the fig caption. I don't think that it's actually going to be checking it, but of course we can build this to what it was over here. We'll say nature and national parks. Then we'll come back over here and apply it. Okay. Now you can hopefully see. Let me go ahead and scroll up so we can see this here. And you'll see that it now has the nature and the national parks. Okay, great. And then it says we need at least 3. And that's why I added a few extra spaces. And sometimes I tell students, feel free to put comments in there. That's a control / on Windows or command / on Windows or command / on a Mac. And you can add a note here saying picture 2, right? And then we can come down here and do the same thing, command / on a Mac or control / on a Windows, picture 3. And then we'll come down here and paste from figure to figure. And again, the only thing that changes here is going to be the image. So I'm grabbing that last one that it said that we needed, and then I'm going to go ahead and paste that in here. And this one is of the sea, And let's go ahead and take a look at what they used for it. So they used South Italy and the islands, and I will do the same. And now we can see that we have the South Italy and the islands. All right, all your 5 anchor elements need to have the H with an attribute value of this. So we have our 3 that we did here. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and scrub up here. So we got the 3, and then here's the 4, and then here's the 5. And then it did say that we needed to add the blanks. So again, this is step number 13, or user story number 13. We're going to go ahead and do target blank on both of these. Target equals, and then underscore blank. And we're going to do the exact same thing to the other one. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and see if this is what it was looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and click on run the test, and we are now 100% complete. Right, so if you made it to the end of this video, great. Again, I can't thank you enough for watching these videos, and hopefully these types of videos do help you in your journey with learning a little bit more about becoming a web developer. So with that being said, thanks for watching. Hopefully you subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.